Okay, so let me jump into it. I've wasted enough time. Uh, Basically, what I want to do is continue what Mark Glesney and Pastor Rob were talking about. They were talking about the truth in the Bible, and they were talking about various aspects. Mark was talking about the veracity of the Bible, how we can believe everything in the Bible, and I'm basically just continuing that. In Romans, it says, do not be conformed to the world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind, that you may be proved what is good and acceptable. So that's what we're trying to do. And my aspect is I was trained as a scientist, got my PhD from Berkeley in electrical engineering and computer science many years ago. And but I used that my whole career. I was employed in different research and development companies and other commercial companies. My last job was down the street at Skyworks making parts for cellular telephones. So I used that my whole life. But the last 7 years since I came to Christ, I've been compelled, I think, by the Holy Spirit. He's been driving me to learn more and more about creation science, and then use that to help the body of Christ. Let me answer a question that you might have. Why do I need to understand creation science? That might be one question. And the answer I have is so you can answer the questions of the world when science is used as a weapon against Christianity. You hear that so often. You hear it on television, you hear it in the movies, you hear it on the radio, everywhere. They're just bombarding, and all of the news magazines are, everything is millions of years, etc. And basically, we need to have an answer, and we need to have a biblical answer, not just an answer that might conform and mix the Bible with secular science, but we need a biblical answer, and we need to be able to defend that. And I hope that the few minutes we have together tonight that I can help you understand that that's a very strong position to hold. You know, as I was saying, you know, we can only trust the recorded history to the eyewitness that would never lie to us, and that's the words of our Lord that have been put into the Holy Bible. Just to make sure you know who I'm using as my resources, I have three main sources. One is the Institute for Creation Research. Dr. Henry Morris is one of the founding giants in this field, written fundamental books on creation science, Genesis, flood, many books, and his passed away, so his son John is continuing in their organizations in Dallas, Texas. Ken Ham, his organization Answers in Genesis is in northern Kentucky. My twin daughters and I had the opportunity to go there and visit that museum, the Creation Museum. It was wonderful. And then Dr. Carl Weiland from Australia, he has a Creation Ministries International. And again, all three of these groups are very strong. They don't do wild speculation. They have proof of everything that they talk about. So I feel very secure in bringing you this information. So what I wanted to do is say, in the beginning, God created dinosaurs. Give you a little celebration. So this is in Genesis 1. You know, God made the beasts of the earth according to its kind. I would call that a pretty good beast there. And behold, it was very good. And the evening and the morning were the sixth day. So the land animals and man were created on the sixth day of creation. So that's, I think, what the truth is from the Bible. Oftentimes you go to a museum and you see a bunch of fossilized bones. You see this young man and his dog looking at the bones, but this is basically what you see. He sees that in his mind's eye. He's thinking about these terrible creatures, and it's very fascinating to young people and old people. It's amazing to find what we discover in the record of the history of the world. So I had a couple of questions. I guess I'm big on asking questions and answering them myself. So did the dinosaurs really exist? Yes. The fossil record really shows an abundance of that. Did dinosaurs rule the earth? I would say no. They were on the earth the same time as mammals, birds, fish, and man, and I'll show you a lot of data there. Did dinosaurs live 65 million years ago, as Mark was suggesting, or 220 million years ago? No. Dinosaurs, as we said, were created on the sixth day about 6,000 to 10,000 years ago. And then they became extinct like many animals have in the fossil record. I wanted to say that the way to verify the truth is what I call compilation scholarship. When you can draw information from many, many sources, not just one source, but you can, obviously the Bible is our primary source of truth, but biology, paleontology, archaeology, history, verbal, written, and visual, radioactive dating, we're using all of these things that so-called scientists use, but we're looking at the data. We have the same data, but we're looking at from a biblical perspective rather than a secular perspective, the world's view of millions of years. And, we're told in 1 Thessalonians that we need to test all things and hold fast to what is good. So that's what we want to do, and I'm going to jump into it. So this is something that David spoke about briefly. There's a lady named Mary Schweitzer, and she used to work at Montana State as a professor, and now she's in North Carolina. And she discovered and reported on soft tissue that was from a T-Rex bone. And when I looked into this data and I did some research, this was in the 1990s, late 90s, but there's been reports of soft tissue being found since 1977. There's been over 42 individual cases of soft tissue, soft, pliable, elastic tissue found in dinosaur bones. And it's not just United States, and in Canada, Sweden, Italy, China. And secular scientists, when you ask them the reason that we're finding soft tissue, when we know soft tissue decays very rapidly, they have no explanation. They say, there's got to be some thing that has preserved it for supposedly all these millions of years. And I can show you some data that says that really soft tissue can't survive more than 40,000 years. So let me just play this clip for you.
What happened next happened by mistake. Mary put some fragments of the bone in acid to dissolve away the outermost layer of mineral. But the acid worked too fast, and all the mineral dissolved away. Being a fossil, there should have been nothing left. But there was. And it was elastic, like living tissue.
This is the piece.
No. She showed us video she took under the microscope.
That's really what happened?
Yes.
That's the dinosaur bone?
Without mineral now. That's what was left.
It looked like the soft tissue she would have expected to find if it had been modern bone. This was impossible. This bone was 68 million years old.
So you see this and you think, what?
I didn't want to tell anybody.
You'd be ridiculed,
yes.
Right?
And so I said to my technician, okay, do it again. I don't believe it.
And yet, in sample after sample, they were there. Things that looked suspiciously like flexible, transparent blood vessels. She finally mustered the courage to tell Jack.
She said she dissolved the bone away and there were blood vessels. And, I was like shocked. I mean,
how could that be?
How could that be? That's right.
The things Mary was finding inside dinosaur bones,
look at that,
blood vessels, and even what seemed to be intact cells, pose a radical challenge to the existing rules of science, that organic material can't possibly survive even 1 million years, let alone 68 million. Mary, Jack, and their team published their B-Rex findings in a series of papers in the journal Science and were promptly attacked. Critics said their samples might have been contaminated, or that the supposed blood vessels were actually something called biofilm, a type of slime. But as Mary showed us, she's been able to replicate her findings. These are pieces of an even older dinosaur, a well-preserved 80-million-year-old duckbill. When she dissolved it away in acid...
Let's put this under the scope here.
Well, look. Is that a blood vessel?
This is a blood vessel.
You're kidding.
You see the branches right there? And look at all of them. And it's so consistent over and over and over again. We do this bone and it comes out and I get excited every time. I can't help it. I mean, 80 million years old.
Mary published her new results last year, and while some of her critics have been swayed, the controversy still rages, and the stakes are high. If blood vessels can survive 80 million years, what about DNA?
One thing I draw your attention to in that film, the fellow who was referred to as Jack, his name is Jack Horner, and he's the head of he's an extremely famous paleontologist from Montana. And notice the way he answered the question. When Leslie Stahl asked the question, how can that be? What did he say? How can it be? And that was it. You know, just repeating the question back to her. So they really have no answer whatsoever. And I've looked up articles, and maybe I'll have to commission my daughter to go look into her annals and see if this is true. But I've seen in many articles that proteins and cells and other things can't last even 40,000 years. So when they said can't last a million years, that's way overestimating the fact. These are just, again, some cover of published papers in the U.S., Sweden, and Italy. I just put it in there for reference. And here's a list up until 2011 of 42 different scientists that have different samples, different dinosaurs. It's not one dinosaur in one lab by some crazy creation scientist. Mary obviously is sticking with the millions of years. Her boss is sticking with the millions of years. Those people who are finding this and performing the science on these samples are not creation scientists. They're people who are secular scientists. Maybe Christians, but they're not creation scientists. And also, this is a question for you. Have you ever heard of anything like this? Have you ever seen a secular museum? Or have you ever heard on Discovery Channel or Nat Geo or whatever about these soft tissues being found? You know, it was on 60 Minutes, one time. Move on to the next story. So this is something that has to be asked to scientists. How can you have this information out there and yet, even if you don't have an answer for it, there's many questions in science, millions of questions that we have no answer for, but at least we talk about it. So I want to, draw my attention to Romans 1:20 through 22. Although they knew God, they didn't glorify him as God, nor were thankful, but became futile in their thoughts, and their foolish hearts were darkened. Professing to be wise, they became fools. So I think that's the way I view a lot of these comments that people make about the findings that are unanswerable. So let me talk a little bit about this is how do evolutionists depict fossilization. So one thing we need to know is how do you become a fossil. So first of all, you have to die to become a fossil. Then, the secular scientists say, over millions of years, the mud slowly flows over the creature, buries him more and more, and then finally, when he's under the sediment, then the bacteria eat their flesh, and their bones are left, which become mineralized. If you've ever had a fish tank and one of your fish dies, you kind of know what happens, and this, happens in the ocean. We don't have garbage disposals. God doesn't need garbage disposals. He invented recycling a long time ago. So the creature dies, if it's a fish, it usually pops to the surface. All of the scavengers and other fish come and eat the parts that they want to, and then the bones fall to the bottom and they fall apart and become part of the sand in the bottom of the ocean. So how would you get a fossil that was well preserved? Let me see. Oh, there could be like a giant flood. Let's just postulate there is a giant flood and all this sediment came pouring over, killed the poor animal that was hit by the flood, and then again the bacteria come and eat away the flesh and the bones are left. And I would say to you that this third version is a lot more believable than the first two. Let me just comment in passing. There are marine fossils that are found near or at the tops of the highest mountains in the world. The Himalayas, 29,000 feet above sea level, they found ammonite shells, fully fossilized. In Chile, they found in the Andes at 5,000 feet elevation the carcass of a whale. And in the Canadian Rockies, there's a very famous deposit of fossils called the Burgess Shale, and that is at 7,600 feet. Now, the secular world might say, oh, well, we have continental drift, and the continents move around, and the waters covered the entire Earth. I've looked at 20 different computer-generated models of how the land masses move. They start off with Pangea and they split in Africa and South America, pull apart and everything. None of those computer models, which they claim are their explanation of how the topology of the world was formed, none of them show 100% coverage by water. I would say maximum there's maybe 50 to 60% coverage of water, and as the land masses move, they never submerge. So how do they explain having marine fossils at the top of the Himalaya mountains? That's another question you can ask. Okay, let me run this video. This is from Nat Geo, who's no friend to creation science.
A summer day in 1999. High school sophomore Tyler Leeson is out on one of his routine prospecting runs. He's been hunting fossils on his family land since he was practically a toddler. As a teenager, he has already headed 20 dinosaur excavations. But nothing could prepare him for what he finds protruding from the rocky hillside.
I followed the bone fragments up the little gully, and I saw 2 spinal bones sticking out of the hill.
Nothing unusual there. Well-preserved dinosaur bones are scattered all over Hell Creek. These were different.
I knocked off a little piece of what I thought was just sandstone, and I looked at it, and it had a weird pattern to it. And so I brought the piece of sandstone back to the lab, and after hours and hours of slowly brushing it, the scales started to appear.
Leeson held in his hands the scaly skin of an animal that had been extinct for 65 million years. Even more intriguing, the skin retained its 3D shape.
The skin hadn't collapsed in around the bone. And at that point, I knew that we had a 3D dinosaur mummy. I was absolutely thrilled.
They dubbed the amazing find Dakota, and the excavation goes into full swing.
When you first lay eyes upon such a remarkable specimen, you are absolutely gobsmacked. How can you not be excited? It's an incredible find.
The fossil is a hadrosaur, a 40-foot, 3.5-ton herbivore. This dino roamed the lush landscape of the late Cretaceous. Though they were one of T-Rex's favorite meals, they were also one of the most successful dinosaurs of the time. More hadrosaur fossils had been found than any other dinosaur. But this one is very special, if not in life, then in death.
Here's the burial
Rather than just fossilized bones and teeth, its skin, tissues, and organs somehow survived across the eons.
Dinosaur fossils are usually isolated bones. Occasionally we're very lucky and get a partial skeleton, and exceptional circumstances we get a complete skeleton articulated. That is the absolute 10 out of 10 for a dinosaur. Dinosaur mummies come in off the scale. These are so rare.
So I'm going to stop it there. But I listen to those words and it says somehow, they're showing the mud covering the dinosaur very slowly. And it says somehow this mummy has been preserved for, 68 million or whatever they said, how many millions of years. This is another one. There's another one that was found in another part of Canada. That one was discovered in Montana. This one's from Canada. And it says over here on the side that the researchers had enough evidence that they could even tell what the dinosaur had eaten for dinner. The ferns and the conifers and magnolias were the dinner, and it was in the stomach in a state that it could still be distinguished of what it was. And soft tissue covered 90% of the fossil, including muscles, nail material, beak, skin. They were all preserved. So again, the decay of animals and formation of fossils and that, it's unbelievable, totally unbelievable. This could be 65 million or 68 million years old. I pulled this kind of grotesque picture. It's a picture of a mummy. And down here in the story, you can look at this later if you want to. We know the mummies from the Egyptian archaeology are approximately 4,000 years old. And they were treated to preserve them so that they would be able to live a second life. The religious practice was to mummify the leaders, the pharaohs and that. And down here it says they were trying to use needles to extract some information from inside the mummy, and it was impossible because the mummy had essentially turned to stone. So again, this kind of tells you what kind of decays and preservation, even though they tried to preserve them with special wrappings and ointments, you can't preserve things that long. Here's some radiocarbon dating information. If you look at the data, this is for dinosaur bone dating. Almost all of the data is under 15,000 years. That's the maximum that possibly could be. It had to be younger than 15,000 years. Most of it's around 5,000 years or less. And there's no data that would say any animal that they... and this is, again, by the secular labs. This isn't creation scientist labs. These are their own technical labs doing this analysis. None of it is over 45,000 years old. This is also something I found interesting. This is 150 million year old squid ink. They found a squid that still had ink inside of it. And this picture here shows an artist who's actually drawn a squid with the squid ink. So the squid ink is not decomposed. It hasn't changed in any way in its composition over supposedly 150 million years old. Again, rates of decomposition just make that impossible. Okay, so let me jump over to the Bible. The sound effect there. Some triceratopses there. Why don't we find the word dinosaur in the Bible? I think this was talked to by David a little bit. I found this cartoon that was kind of easy to understand. King James version of the Bible was translated in 1611, and the word dinosaur was first proposed in England in the year 1841. So there's 230 years between the King James version of the Bible and the word dinosaur even being, you could call it invented. So there's no way it could be in the Bible, in the King James version of the Bible. So what did people call large reptilian animals that were fearful creatures? And the Bible names here are either dragon, behemoth, leviathan, or tenian. Those are the words that were used before 1400. And if you wanted to make a modern translation of those, you would call probably the dragon would become dinosaur, and behemoth is Brachiosaurus, and Leviathan is Chronosaurus. And so unfortunately, it seems like the New King James Version doesn't use the word dragon or dinosaur. It's has other translations for the same passages, and you can see it goes all the way Genesis, Psalms, Isaiah, all through the Old Testament. That's might be one of the problems with the New King James Version, at least in my view, is they didn't stick to the original translation of dragon for these creatures. So let's look at Job 40 and take a look at how behemoth is described. I've outlined some of the main features. The animal eats grass like an ox. It has great strength in its loins or back legs, muscles in its belly. The behemoth moves his tail much like a cedar tree. And behemoth was one of the largest and strongest animals. So a lot of the translations that translate Job 40 talk about either an elephant, which has a tail like a rope, or a hippopotamus that also has a tail like a rope. So I tried to figure out what animal that we know of has a tail like a cedar tree.
Of Variformin's been extinct since the Cretaceous period. I mean, this thing is about this thing. What?
Does that remind you of a cedar tree? He's going to tell us what this animal is.
It's a dinosaur.
Okay, enough of Jurassic Park. But that kind of gives you, of all of the creatures that you could say have a tail like a cedar tree, that would be one that I would propose, not an elephant or a hippo. The next passage in Job that's interesting is describes Leviathan. Leviathan, God asked Job, do you think you can catch it with a fishhook? Mockingly, he said, can you put a ring in its nose to tame it? And in number 6, when Leviathan sneezes, he sends forth a light. His eyes glow, and out of his mouth sparks of fire. Smoke comes from his nostrils, and flame come out of his mouth. Now, I think Rob has talked about this in the past. There are animals in nature that have some very unusual capabilities. This is a picture from one of the websites of what Leviathan might have looked like. But the creature that we find that has the ability to actually shoot fire is what's called the bombardier beetle. You can look it up on the internet. The bombardier beetle has 2 chemical pouches in its abdomen, and it has a way of spraying those 2 chemicals together, which when combined, it's like a rocket engine. When the rocket engine fires, it fires the chemicals, liquid rocket engine, and ignites, and then that powers the rocket ship into outer space. But this beetle defends itself by spraying its enemies with this mixture, which is basically on fire. So that's one thing. The other, another creature And you might say, well, how do you know the bones of dinosaurs? How do you know what the creature was like? Think of the electric eel. You would, if you found the skeleton of electric eel, would you know that it was able to generate thousands of volts to shock its enemies and its prey, to force them to leave it alone or to kill them? So just finding the bones of something, as we do with a lot of these fossils, it doesn't say exactly how or what the animal did. And again, it's very compelling, I think, to look at a broader picture and really try to understand in the biblical sense of what's going on. So this is also in Isaiah. There's descriptions of fiery flying serpents and vipers with fire. So these are flying creatures. They probably have no feathers. They're like these pictures look a lot like what they call pterosaurs, the flying reptiles, the 40-foot wingspan. So these are giant creatures. So so stepping a little bit away from the Bible, I wanted to search and look in a lot of different publications and in the literature about any mention. So you would think if these terrible creatures that are frightening and so large, that they would be in ancient history writings, and they are. There's a famous author who wrote a book about natural history in 70 A.D., Pliny, from the Roman era. And he describes Africa, his quote is, "Africa produces elephants, but it is India that produces the largest elephants as well as the dragon." If you want to go to another historian that deals with animals, Claudius Salian, he wrote quite a famous book on nature of animals in 220 A.D. The Fijian history also states that dragons were born, which can reach 10 paces in length. So ancient historians, unfortunately, a lot of the libraries, there's a very famous library in Alexandria, Egypt, and that library was actually burned 3 times. It was burned by the Romans, it was burned by the Christians, and it was burned by the Muslims. So that library, which was reputed to maintain all of the history of the ancient world, was burned 3 times. And I think it is, definitely Satan's move to try to destroy man's ability to understand history. And then, so I went and made a list. A very famous historian, Herodotus, from Greece in 484 BC. He talked about flying reptiles, probably like Isaiah, with wings, as I say, perhaps part of the pterosaur family. Alexander the Great, who conquered from Macedonia, who conquered most of the world around the Mediterranean Sea, he described dragons that lived in caves and frightened his soldiers. I already talked about Pliny the Elder. Flavius Joseph, who was a Jewish military person who was captured by the Romans, and they decided to keep him. He wrote a history, and he describes flying serpents. There's a lot of oral history. St. George and the Dragon. St. George was a soldier, a Roman soldier, but he was born in Persia, and he is actually venerated as a Christian martyr. He was supposedly killed a dragon and saved a whole city. And even in the 1200s, Marco Polo and his famous Travels of Marco Polo, and you can go on Amazon or you can go on the internet and you can actually read this. I actually put in the presentation. I won't go through it. Well, since I'm here, He's talking in his book number 2, chapter 49, he's talking about the dragons, great serpents that live in part of China. Some of them are 10 paces in length, some are more, some are less. And down at the bottom, the mouth is large enough to swallow a man whole, with great pointed teeth, so hideous, ugly, and every man beast must stand in fear. Does that sound like a dragon or a dinosaur to you? I mean, it does to me. And this is in the 1200s. It's a map of his travels, Marco Polo's travels. So let's talk about, is there any physical evidence? If people were seeing these things, what's the evidence that we have left to us that maybe show pictures? Here's a mosaic that was in Rome that has two long-necked creatures that look like dinosaurs. This is actually very interesting. It's a brass insert into a cathedral that was built in the 15th century, Carlisle Cathedral in England. And it depicts, two animals that are clearly like brontosaurus-type animals. And the funny thing is that they had so many people coming and looking at these brass plaques in the floor of the cathedral, they covered them with a carpet. And they won't let anybody look under the carpet unless you have special permission from high authority in the church. So even the church in England is hiding these things. These are some wall paintings by the Sioux Indians in the American Iowa area. Here's a depiction of a dinosaur on the wall of the Grand Canyon. It looks very much like what the artists think certain dinosaurs look like. And then this one's one of my favorites. This is a Stegosaurus. It's depicted on the column in the temple in Cambodia, Angkor Wat, which was built in the 1186. It's a vast complex of temples, but in the columns, mixed in with other animals, birds and fishes and horses and whatever, there's no modern animal that has these spikes that exactly replicate what we see in the fossil record. So there's some pictures. This is a mosaic. They call it the Nile mosaic, and it shows a bunch of hunters killing a dinosaur on this. This is only one small part of it. It tells the history of a city, but part of the history of the city was a dinosaur was being killed. Here's another one. Here's another one that's a depiction of a Mayan painting. They're sacrificing the heads of the people that they had defeated in battle, and also down here in the red box you see the head of a dinosaur. This is in a Jewish synagogue, outside of a Jewish synagogue that was circa 400 to 700 AD. And you can see two dinosaurs. This is a horse being attacked and killed by a very large dinosaur. That's on the side of a synagogue in stone, carved in stone. This is a painting when the missionaries first went to visit this tribe called the Yaru tribe in Australia. They were talking to them, and they said, they had in their history interaction with large aquatic animals that in some cases ate their people, and they asked the tribe to draw a depiction of what they have in their oral tradition, and they drew this, and this is quite clearly a plesiosaur kind of an animal, and you can see inside they've drawn a human that's been eaten, and these tribesmen are trying to kill the animal for taking the life of their tribe. So the question is, did man walk with dinosaurs? And this is a fairly famous site in Glen Rose, Texas. It's found the footprints of dinosaurs, very clearly dinosaurs, and footprints of man are crossing. And it shows in this one case, and there's many, many, many cases. I'll show you a little movie in a second, but there's 136 consecutive tracks over 400 feet. And in some cases, you have a dinosaur footprint and a man's footprint. And this is in the layers of the sediment as there's been flooding and things like that. But you can clearly see a dinosaur and a human footprint. So let me show you this.
According to conventional scientific theory, no human beings were alive then to witness these events. Or were they? Over 100 million years ago, the limestone bedrock of the Paluxy River in Texas was a muddy plain. It was here that countless dinosaurs left their footprints to be fossilized and preserved forever. But the tracks of another creature have also been preserved in these banks, possibly the tracks of man. Archaeologist Carl Bau has led the investigation of these controversial prints for over 12 years.
My reaction was one of shock. I had heard of human footprints being found in this locale on the Paluxy near Glen Rose, Texas, but I was rather skeptical. And here, after removing actual rock layers, the team and I excavated a series of dinosaur footprints. And 18½ inches from one of those dinosaur footprints, we excavated a 16-inch human footprint. We excavated 12 footprints in a series. And when you find a trail with left, right pace and stride, the right distance apart, then you have to interpret this as belonging to humankind.
It's been claimed that the Paluxy River footprints are a hoax carved into the limestone bedrock as a tourist attraction.
Well, we found trails leading under limestone ledges and actually removed the limestone ledges one slab of rock at a time. And we found that both the dinosaur footprints and the trail of human footprints continued under the rock ledges. This evidence is real.
I first saw the Burdick print on my initial visit to Glen Rose in 1984. My impression at that time was that it was too perfect. But it's clearly a human footprint demonstrating the heel section, the arch, the base of the metatarsals, the first or great toe, second, third, fourth, and fifth toe.
After our examination of this print, we find that it definitely is in the Cretaceous limestone, in the same formation with the dinosaur footprints. Here we're looking at a cross-section, and we can see very obvious following contours under the great toe, and actually structures under each one. Where we see the calcite inclusion, the force was concentrated and produced these load-bearing structures, which are exactly what geologists look for. We have eliminated the idea that it's carved. It definitely is original impression in the sediment.
So two main points from that video is, one, they found footprints in a layer and in a wall that hadn't been excavated. And when they take that wall and they pull it down, the footprints and the animal dinosaur tracks continue underneath that wall that they just pulled down. So if there's any claim that the people are doing this themselves, there's no way you can get underneath a thick layer of rock in order to go carve the footprints. It has to be there, and as they peel the rock away and they look further and further as they go back into this wall and peel the material away, the footprints are there. So it's nobody's carving them. And that last picture with the indentations, those discolored regions are in an X-ray that they took of the material. And what they found is when you press down on that material, it causes a compaction of the material underneath the toes. So it can't be somebody carving it. It had to be from some pressure. There had to be pressure compressing the material that was under the toe in order to form those kinds of depictions on the X-ray itself. So it had to be made by force. It couldn't have been made by an artist carving it. Also, there's from another site in that same area, there's, I think David talked about this, where there's a sandal print, and under the sandal print, embedded in the rock, is a trilobite, which are from the Cambrian time period, supposedly 550 million years ago. So here's somebody with a sandal and stepping on a trilobite. Let me switch over. So that's some of the evidence. There's also a fellow who, Dr. Carl Werner, who's done a lot of work on what we call living fossils. Let me play just a minute or two of this one.
Have natural history museums become irrelevant? Have their displays become so outdated and archaic that they are now misleading the public? Have museum curators consciously withheld certain fossils from their public displays? Fossils that would place the theory of evolution in jeopardy? Or do they not have the financial resources to update their museums? This man has raised these questions and asks for you to decide the answers.
Okay. Let me go back up. So let me talk about this gentleman. His name is, as I said, Dr. Carl Werner. He's a medical doctor. He worked for many years in the emergency medical department in a large Missouri hospital. He and his wife decided, after they had become financially secure, to spend the rest of their lives looking for fossils to answer one question. He decided that the theory of evolution that is shown to people through natural history museums, TV, movies, etc., always depict these dinosaur fossils and dinosaurs and plants and everything, but they don't show the other animals. And his theory was that if the flood actually occurred, then there should be cases where modern animals are found in the same dig sites and same areas as the dinosaurs. So if you could find dinosaurs and, say, mammals living together when they're supposed to be spaced by millions of years of time, the dinosaurs are supposed to have died, and then the mammals taken over the dominance of the evolution. That should be easily disproved. And he spent over 14 years and traveled over 100,000 miles. He visited he visited essentially museums in all of the major cities that have dinosaur museums. He went to dig sites. He went to the one where Mary Schweitzer, Hell Creek, he went there and spent a lot of time talking with the people and understanding what they were finding. And so, and he's written 2 books. I have 2 DVDs that you could check out at your leisure, watch them. I think DVD number 2 is better than number 1, but they're both interesting. And it's essentially living fossils. And what he found when he went to the museums, and he didn't look at the displays, but he said, I want to look at what you keep in the basement. I want to see what you keep in the back room. Do you ever have any other fossils that are of the same time period as the dinosaurs? And he went to the dig sites and asked that same question, and he did it in Berlin, and he did it in Australia. He did it. He's a skin diver. His wife, who co-authored the book, she's a world-famous photographer. The books have absolutely gorgeous pictures. I lent it to Jim, and I think you could say that those pictures are pretty impressive, right? So what he found, so what's the bottom line? What did he find in these layers with the dinosaurs? Parrots. He found owls. He found penguins. He found flamingos, ducks, loons, albatross, cormorants, sandpipers, and avocets. He found essentially every genus of the bird family. Okay, then he went looking for amphibians. He found salamanders, frogs, snakes, lizards, turtles, and crocodilians. He found all of the amphibians. So then what about mammals? Mammals are supposed to be at the top of the tree of evolution. When he looked carefully and he talked to people and they opened their back rooms and their vaults to him, he found squirrels, possums, Tasmanian devils, hedgehogs, shrews, beavers, primates, meaning apes, and duck-billed platypuses. He found over 432 animal species in the dinosaur layer and 100 complete mammal skeletons in the dinosaur layer. Has anybody heard about that before? And this is documented in 2 books. He's has peer reviews. You know, this is undeniable. It's in the secular museums themselves. And they choose not to show that to the people because it causes the theory of evolution to come under question. Let me skip over this one. You can read it on your own. There's a whole list of living fossils. The reason he calls them living fossils, it's like a fish that they call the coelacanth that was supposed to be living 80 million years ago until somebody caught one in the Indian Ocean about 30, 40 years ago. And now they've caught, hundreds of those coelacanth fish. The coelacanth was being used as a transitional species, saying that they have special bones in their rear fins that turned into legs and became amphibians as they crawled up on the land. And so coelacanths were one of the things that people used to show evolution was true, and now they're finding them alive in the oceans. Dinosaur graveyards. This also was talked a little bit about by David. All throughout the world, there are these dinosaur graveyards where there's a disarticulated jumble of bones of hundreds and sometimes thousands of dinosaurs all mixed together, all crashed together like a giant accident on the 405. And it's been found all over the world. There's wherever there are dinosaurs. This is one from Utah. Here's one from Wyoming, dinosaur graveyard. And here's one from Jim's state of Colorado. This arrow here shows a man. He's crawled up on the ledge here, and you can see this band. I put these dotted lines to show you there's just a band of creatures. Looks like it might have been deposited by water, like a tsunami or something, caught these animals and just pushed them until the power of the wave, that wave stopped and they got deposited, and then another wave came and another wave came. So all over the world are these dinosaur graveyards. And it's very interesting in the U.S. that these graveyards are found in this outlined area, through Montana. This is Hell Creek. Up here, there's the Burgess Shale, Colorado, Utah, some in Texas, Biloxi River. So these dinosaurs are found predominantly in that area, not just evenly distributed all over the land. So let me talk a little bit about what happened to the dinosaurs. So on the left we have God's truth, the flood, Noah's flood, where all air-breathing land animals were killed. And then there's man's speculation on the right, which is the dinosaurs were killed by a number of ideas, one of them being a giant meteorite. I've put down a bunch of again, I won't go through these in detail. They were talking about what killed the dinosaurs. Meteorite strike is the number one theory, but global warming, global cooling. They died of overeating. They became blind and couldn't reproduce. One of them was flatulence, that they killed themselves with methane gas. a lot of different ideas. So basically the prime theory that you'll see mostly on television is that the dinosaurs died 65 million years ago when a giant meteor struck the Yucatan Peninsula near Mexico. And the evidence they have for this is a concentration of a chemical element called iridium, which they find in meteorites. So when they find a piece of meteorite, when they do a physical analysis of the chemistry that makes up the materials in the meteorite, they find the concentration of iridium that's different than what we have on Earth. But one thing that they didn't consider is that when you look at the emission from volcanoes, when a volcano erupts and you look at the material that's ejected from the volcano, it also has iridium of the same kind of concentration. So you really can't distinguish a meteorite from a volcano based on iridium. And that was one of the things that they were jumping to conclusions on. The other problem is, I've listed a number of problems. When people have looked at it in detail, the extinction wasn't sudden. If there was a global catastrophe that killed animals all, there would be a year or two when the animals would die from either the temperature change or the dust that polluted the air or whatever. And they found out that the extinction lasts many, many thousands or hundreds of thousands of years. The other question is dinosaurs. You saw those dinosaurs in Jurassic Park, and then you see a frog, and you say, which species is more fragile? Is it the dinosaur, if some catastrophe happened with the air being polluted and the temperature changing, or would the frog be at more risk? And obviously it didn't kill off the frogs. So why is that? It doesn't correlate with the crater dates. When they looked at data of when the crater was formed, and as I said, the iridium enrichment could be from volcanoes. So there's a number of holes in the story. So what I like is the truth, which said the waters prevailed exceedingly on the earth, and all the high hills under the whole heaven were covered. The whole heaven. All flesh died. All. And the beasts and all that was on dry land died. So this is a depiction of Noah's flood in the Bible. And so that would explain why all of the animals that weren't on Noah's Ark died. As David has told us from our past creation science, there were dinosaurs on the ark, but the ones that were living in the times before the flood all perished. So I like this one, the dinosaur, I survived the flood. So every animal, so did the dinosaurs come off the ark? Every animal, every creeping thing, every bird, and whatever crept on the earth according to their families went out of the ark. So the dinosaurs went out. But what did they face when they were outside the ark? We see one possibility is a drastic climate change. We know that the people before the flood were living on average 930 years old. Adam 930 and Noah or Methuselah 969. after the flood, you see the lifespan shorten radically. So whatever was allowing humans to live a long time probably was allowing dinosaurs to live a long time. And when they came off the ark, the climate had changed radically. Also, there were a number of predators. Now the dinosaurs were one-on-one with maybe lions or bears, rhinoceros. They were competing for the food with large mammals, and that probably took a toll on the dinosaur. My favorite one is Kentucky Fried Dinosaur. You can have the small, medium, or large. It should be extra crispy, though. And basically what happened is man killed the rest of the dinosaurs as a source of protection. First of all, you wouldn't want a T-Rex roaming through your village, and also as a source of food. So that's the same reason as many other species of animals went extinct. So as I'm winding down here, I think I have no problem with dinosaurs and the biblical Christianity, none whatsoever. The animals were on earth, created on the sixth day. They were mainly destroyed in the flood, and then after the flood, they were gradually died out due to habitat change, weather change, and hunting by man, just like many of the other species did. The Bible actually gives a much better explanation, especially with all of this contemporary evidence we're getting from the world about soft tissue and all of that can't be explained. So I think that's a much better explanation. In dealing with the truth of the Bible, Deuteronomy, you shall not add to the word which I command you, nor shall take from it, that you may keep the commandments of the Lord your God, which I command you. So, we hear over and over, we want to take the Bible as literal truth of the creation of the world, the spiritual things as well as the earthly things. So let me give you a call to action as Christians. I'd like to, put in front of you that we're really not debating with the world, the secular world. It's a war really for the minds and souls of the people, including the children and grandchildren. And we want to use the Scripture as a moral high ground, both in our spiritual things, our spiritual life, as well as the history of the world. And so I challenge you to go out and spread the word. I know many, many people in this auditorium are doing that, have done it for many, many years, and I think there's God's blessing on all of you saints that have been doing this tremendous work. And anyone who hasn't done it as a major activity in their life, I think that's something you should look into and pray about, because it's a blessing. I'm sure we have lots of people who see what a tremendous blessing it is to share with the rest of the world. Just go back to Isaiah. Also I heard the voice of the Lord saying, "Whom shall I send, and who will go for us?" And then I said, "Here am I, send me." So see if you can answer that call. So as this again is on the DVD, I have some books that I found that are free online. These are all from the Creation Ministries International, the Australian group, but excellent books. Doesn't cost a penny. If you have friends or neighbors or people that you're witnessing to, they can get these books, again, free. The first two are written to refute evolution and answer questions. And the third one is kind of interesting, In 6 Days. This is a book by 50 scientists who bear their testimony and show why they believe, due to their particular field, whether it's physics or biology or astronomy or medicine or whatever the field is, history, they bear their testimony that when they look into their experts in these fields, they look into the truth. They see the Bible as being 100% true. So that's a good book. And you can just cut and paste that in the browser, and if you have a computer, you can get that for free. Or I have the first 2 books, Answers and Refuting Evolution. I have those books. I'd be happy to lend out to anyone who wants to borrow them. And so that's the end. I just want to thank you for your attention. Again, I want to thank Mark and I want to thank David.
Don't know why I didn't see it before. Don't know how, but all I was searching for was you. All the lies that have kept me in the dark, they can't